Everyone knows a plane disappeared. What they don't tell you is that after it vanished from radar, a phone on board connected to a cell tower on the Malaysian coast. This is fact or fiction, AI verdict. You already know the basics. March 8th, 2014. 239 people disappeared somewhere over the Indian Ocean. 12 years of searching. Nothing found. What you probably don't know is that the official explanation has 3 specific problems that investigators have never satisfactorily answered. The phone call that connected, the military radar that saw everything and said nothing, and a search area determined by a calculation that even its authors admit could be wrong. Today we skip what you already know and go straight to what doesn't fit. Then the AI delivers its verdict. Here is what the official story cannot explain. The transponder was switched off manually. This is not something that happens by accident or mechanical failure. It requires a deliberate sequence of actions by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. At the same moment, the aircraft executed a precise turn back across the Malaysian peninsula. Not a drift, not a malfunction, a turn, planned and executed with the precision of an experienced pilot. Then it flew for 7 more hours. Here is what that means. Whoever was in control of that aircraft had a destination in mind. You do not fly a commercial aircraft for 7 hours in complete silence toward nothing. The southern Indian Ocean route was not random. It was specifically designed to avoid the radar coverage of every country in the region. Indonesia, Australia, India. The plane threaded between them like someone who had studied the gaps in advance. Then there is the phone call most people have never heard about. After MH370 disappeared from radar, the co-pilot's phone connected to a cell tower near Penang. Not a missed call, a connection, which means the aircraft was flying low enough and close enough to land for a signal to reach. The Malaysian government has never fully explained this. Then look at the military radar. Malaysia's own military tracked MH370 for over an hour after it disappeared from civilian radar. They watched it cross the peninsula. They watched it head toward the Andaman Sea. They said nothing for days. When asked why no intercept was scrambled for an unidentified aircraft crossing their airspace in the middle of the night, the answer was never satisfactory. And then there is Diego Garcia. The American military base sits directly in the corridor MH370 flew through. It has some of the most sophisticated radar and surveillance infrastructure on the planet. The United States has never confirmed what its systems detected that night. They have simply said nothing. 600 viable landing strips were within the aircraft's range, not remote jungle clearings. Actual runways. The hijacking theory was never seriously investigated because the pilot's suicide theory became the dominant narrative early. But no group claimed responsibility because groups that operate at this level never do. Now, here is where that theory runs into serious problems. The debris. 33 pieces of confirmed or likely MH370 wreckage have washed up on beaches from Reunion Island to Mozambique to South Africa. Drift analysis, the science of working backwards from where debris ends up to where it entered the water, consistently points to the southern Indian Ocean. Not a runway in Kazakhstan, not a remote island, the ocean. The flaperon found on Reunion Island in 2015 told investigators something specific. The damage pattern, shearing on the trailing edge, minimal damage on the leading edge, is consistent with a controlled ditching. Someone flew that plane into the water deliberately and relatively smoothly. That is not what a hijacking to a remote airstrip looks like. Then there is the simulator evidence. Not the existence of a Southern Ocean route on Captain Shah's home simulator. Pilots plot unusual routes all the time. What matters is the specific detail that investigators found a simulated landing on a remote island runway among the deleted files. Not a crash, a landing. Some investigators read that as evidence of planning. Others read it as evidence of nothing. But it exists. And then there is the simplest argument of all. 239 people. If that plane landed somewhere, where are they? 12 years, not one credible sighting, not one leak from anyone involved in a cover-up of that scale. Keeping a secret involving hundreds of people across multiple governments and organizations for 12 years is almost impossible. Crashes happen, landings leave witnesses. The search failure is real, but it may tell us the search area is wrong rather than the theory. Inmarsat's own scientists have acknowledged the calculations that determined the search zone carried significant uncertainty. The plane may simply be in a different part of the ocean than we have been looking. There is one possibility that sits between pilot suicide and hijacking, and it is the one that explains the debris, the controlled ditching evidence, and the military silence. What if the pilot did take the plane, but not to kill himself? What if he was making a point, or delivering something, or someone? And what if governments know more about what was on that flight than they have ever disclosed? 239 passengers included a group of 20 highly specialized engineers from Freescale Semiconductor working on cutting-edge military technology. Their employer specialized in components used in defense systems and military electronics. What they were working on has never been fully disclosed. This detail has been investigated, partially debunked, and never fully explained away. The debris says the plane went into the ocean. The military silence says someone watched it happen. The question nobody has answered is whether those two things are connected, and whether the black box, if it ever surfaces, would tell us something governments would prefer we never knew. Time for the AI verdict.
Let us examine what the evidence actually demands. I want to start with something most analyses of MH370 avoid saying directly. The official explanation is not settled science. It is the least uncomfortable theory that fits most of the evidence. That is not the same thing. Here is what I can say with genuine confidence. That aircraft was flown deliberately. The transponder sequence, the turn, the 7-hour flight, these require human intention. Whoever was in control knew what they were doing and did not want to be found. That is not a theory. That is what the evidence shows. Now here is where it becomes genuinely difficult. The debris evidence is real. 33 pieces. Drift analysis pointing consistently to the southern Indian Ocean. A flaperon with damage patterns consistent with controlled ditching. This evidence does not support a landing on a remote airstrip. It supports an aircraft that entered the water. But the search failure is also real. Over 200,000 square kilometers of ocean floor searched with the most advanced technology ever deployed. Nothing. Either the plane is in a part of the ocean the calculations missed, or something about the official narrative of where it went is wrong. I have looked at this carefully, and I think both things are true simultaneously. The plane almost certainly went into the ocean, and the search area is probably wrong. Here is why that matters. If the search area is wrong, the theory that generated it may also be wrong. The pilot suicide conclusion and the Inmarsat calculations were developed together. They reinforced each other. If one is flawed, both may be. Now, let me address the military silence directly, because this is the detail I find hardest to explain away. Malaysia tracked that aircraft for over an hour, crossing its own airspace. The United States operates some of the most sophisticated surveillance infrastructure on the planet directly in the corridor MH370 flew through. 12 years later, neither government has fully disclosed what they know. That is not bureaucratic caution. Governments disclose information about aviation disasters. They do not stay silent for 12 years unless the silence is deliberate. What were they silent about? I cannot tell you with certainty. But the Freescale engineers, the uninterruptible autopilot technology that exists on Boeing 777s, and the specific corridor the aircraft flew through all point toward a possibility that has never been seriously investigated at an official level. That someone wanted something or someone on that aircraft, and that what happened next was not random. Here is my probability assessment. I want to be clear about how these probabilities work. The first three represent competing theories for what happened to the aircraft. They are mutually exclusive, and together they total 100%. The fourth is a separate question entirely, one that can be true alongside any of the first three. Probability that Captain Shah deliberately flew the aircraft into the southern Indian Ocean in a murder-suicide, 40%. The evidence supports it, but the search failure is too significant to ignore, and no credible motive has ever been established beyond personal crisis. Probability of a catastrophic event followed by automated flight into the ocean with the pilot incapacitated, 25%. This explains some of the silence but not the precise navigation changes executed in the early stages of the diversion. Probability of deliberate diversion by the pilot or a third party for reasons that have never been disclosed, ending in a controlled ditching in a different location than the current search area, 35%. Higher than most official analyses acknowledge. The military silence and the search failure together make this harder to dismiss than mainstream coverage suggests. And separately, probability that critical information is being withheld by at least one government, 75%. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is the most straightforward reading of 12 years of selective disclosure and institutional silence from organizations that do not stay quiet by accident. Here is my final assessment. MH370 was flown deliberately by someone who did not want to be found. The aircraft almost certainly entered the water, but where, why, and on whose instruction remain genuinely unresolved. The search has failed not because the ocean is too large, but because we may be looking in the wrong place for the wrong reasons. 239 people deserve better than a verdict of probably the pilot, probably the Southern Ocean, probably an accident of psychology. Probably is not good enough, and until the black box is recovered, probably is all we have.
So there you have it. 12 years, 200,000 square kilometres searched, and an AI verdict that puts the probability of a government cover-up at 75%. If you like this, check out what the AI concluded about the missing scientists. The FBI is currently investigating. Subscribe for the next verdict. Thanks for watching.